Hey, it's Harrison. Welcome back to Wellbeing Creative. On episode 17, I'm lucky enough to have a conversation with the one and only Ray Volpe. Ray is an incredibly talented producer and DJ who has been grinding in the EDM circuit for quite some time now. Someone who I've known since booking him in Detroit back in 2018 or so, and getting to watch him grow into the captivating act that he is today. I know Ray is chock full of incredible information and tidbits that are certain to be useful and insightful for all listeners. I'm excited to get into this one. So with that being said, welcome to Wellbeing Creative, Ray Volpe.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Very stoked, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm feeling really good. Feeling kind of rejuvenated right now, I feel.
That's great. That's great. Rejuvenated from what?
The last few months, it's been nonstop on the Nexus tour with Excision, just doing a bunch of dates on the road with him, like 30, 40 dates or so. And now I'm home for just under 2 weeks, so I can work on some stuff, getting some admin stuff ready, get some music ready before we go back out on the road to Europe and Asia. So I feel very rested right now, and I've never felt rested before, so I'm happy about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that tour was a lot of planes, trains, and automobiles.
It was just nonstop. It was nonstop.
That's awesome. Yeah, I caught your set in Detroit, and it was definitely a good one.
Dude, thank you. That was dude. Detroit's a good room. That was a cool venue too when we were there.
Yeah, a lot of history at the Masonic Temple.
Absolutely.
So I want to get into this. Going back, I learned that you started producing music around 12 years old. At what age did you know that this would be your career, and what was the turning point?
Oh, I think I feel like subconsciously I always knew right after I started, but
Mhm.
I don't think it really kind of clicked until 2 years later is when I knew I wanted it to be my career, at least. And maybe not that it will be, but that I wanted it to be. It was about 2 years, or no, sorry, 4 years later. Because I started it at 2010. In 2014 is when Excision started playing out my music for the first time. And that was like like the first massive artist to ever show any love or support to me. So at that point, I was like, this is what I want to do. I was just recognized by the person that I had gone to. It's the only show I ever purchased a GA ticket for to go to a show in EDM was Excision, which is crazy. It was like one of the Executioner tours in Charlotte at the Fillmore. So
Pretty
like
nuts.
to have that recognition from him a year, because that was in 2013. So a year later to have him playing out my songs, I'm like, wait, this is crazy. Like I was just here on the floor witnessing this, and now to have my music played out by him, I knew at that point I was like, I need to do this forever.
And now 10 years later, you're on the road with him, which is pretty crazy.
The most full circle thing I think I've ever experienced in my entire life, honestly.
Yeah, and I know Excision has played other roles in your career, and we might get into that too. But it's really cool to see all of that come to fruition.
100%, 100%.
So you've been releasing music for a long time. I know early on you were pretty discouraged by putting music out on labels. How have you overcome constraints with releasing music on labels that can be kind of restrictive?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was very daunting. It was very scary because everything I sent out, I was just rejected, which I understand why. At the time, you don't. Anytime that as an artist you send your music out to a label or maybe a YouTube promo channel or a blog for placement, when you get rejected, you don't get why. You're like, this song is good. I know the song is good. Why didn't they take it? And at the end of the day, you have to look back at it, and there's a couple of reasons that might be. There's really just one of two realistic reasons, being like, one is maybe the music wasn't as good as you thought, because everyone likes their stuff the most, right? Or maybe some people don't, but like you always are gonna be your biggest hype man yourself and be like, no, I know what I make is sick, but maybe it wasn't. And then you look back years later and you're like, that song was not good. But or the other side of it is the business side, where like, why should this label invest in you if you have no fans or you're just starting out? They need to make their money back too, et cetera, et cetera. So like a lot of that frustration I had in the beginning of not getting anywhere with labels, I just kind of was like, all right, I'm gonna just do it myself. And I decided to do the self-release route. I used a couple of different distribution companies in the beginning. I was working with Root Note for a little bit. I moved over to what SoundCloud now. It used to be Repost Network back in the day when they were now they were bought out and SoundCloud for artists exists. But I used Repost for a bit, and then I moved over to TuneCore. It was kind of like my second to last home. That was like a big home for me for a while before I
Mhm.
moved over and started working with labels again later in my career, which was a great kind of advancement for me.
There's probably something pretty vulnerable about, putting music that you work countless hours, maybe days, maybe months on, and then, having it turned down by a label.
Yeah, it's super. It's discouraging. It makes you feel like, oh, what am I doing wrong, or what can I possibly do? But then it's also motivation because I use that all as like, all right, let me find a way to now take this and make sure that the song could be the best it can be on its own when I put it out myself. So it kind of it lights a fire under you a little bit. So for me, if we date back to like maybe 2016 or so when I did my EP Bipolar, I had shopped that around to a bunch of labels and they all rejected it. And I thought it was a good body of work. To this day, I still think it's a good body of work. And I was building a really, solid foundation of independent fans by myself. I was doing a lot of the Spotify follow gates before other people were.
Mhm.
I was kind of ahead of the game on that a little bit.
That's like
And
when sorry to interrupt, but that's like when you have a group of artists that are kind of sticking together to make sure they repost and follow each other or something like that.
Yeah, so like we would do like originally everyone would do like free download for the song, and it would be like follow on SoundCloud, repost the song, um, and then some people were doing like follow on Twitter for the song, anything to like unlock that free download. But then there were like a few people that were starting to do Spotify, and I was like, this looks interesting, so like let's jump on that train. So I hopped on that, and I was starting to get a lot of Spotify followers from that, and I was like, I really feel like I'm building this nice solid, family of community around me of fans that are following all my independent stuff. And I shopped that EP Bipolar around and no one wanted it. And so it discouraged me, but it also lit that inspiration for me to and motivation to go as crazy as I can with rolling it out on the marketing side. And I started sending out like hundreds of emails, trying to find a placement for every song, which I ended up securing by myself, which was the most fulfilling and validating feeling. I secured a premiere and a post on like a blog for every song, and I released one from the EP every song like once a week basically, leading up to the whole thing being out on all platforms to listen to. And it was like the coolest feeling in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that sometimes like an obstacle, like a label turning down a release can lead to like unleashing skills that you maybe didn't even know you had inside of you, that like now you've gone the gauntlet of, getting your music placed and having a successful self-release. Like maybe if labels would have just, kind of blindly gotten behind it, you would have never learned those skills, and those seem to be pretty valuable
Definitely.
skills.
100%. I think that it's kind of like when you see people and then like you'll see like TikToks about this or stories on Twitter, or it happens in movies where like this girl gets dumped by like a guy and then she has like a massive glow up, or like same thing with a guy getting dumped by a girl or whatever, he has a massive glow up or something. It's kind of like that, like it lights a fire under you to just like learn new things and try to make the most of it, because it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna do this myself. And I think there's a line there where some people may fall on the other side where they use it and it demotivates them and it discourages them. But it's definitely something people handle rejection differently, and I think it's all about how you handle it and trying to find the most of it. Because if you sit in it for too long, then it's just going to negatively impact not only your mental health but also your career as well. Because it's never good to just be sulking in it all the time. So it's trying to find those ways out, and that's what I tried to do with that EP and for the self releases I did a little bit afterwards too, until I started working with labels in like 2019 or so.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's like not taking no for an answer, not looking at yourself as like the victim, and really taking responsibility and finding a way to get the music out there to
Yeah,
listeners. And obviously it's paid off. So
thank you,
uh,
thank you. I definitely
commend you
think
for
that's the
that.
way you have to. Thank you. I definitely think that's the way you have to go about it. Because if you don't, then you'll sink.
Totally. I've also gathered that at one point you had an old manager, and it seems like you guys went through some ups and downs, and towards the end, he even like told you it may be time to give up on the Ray Volpe project. First of all, I'm like really glad that you didn't, and second of
Thank you.
all, how did you recompose yourself after that to keep moving forward?
It was hard. It was a situation where depending on who asks me and on the day that I'm asked about it, or the podcast that you listen to or the interview that you read, sometimes I'm like, my reaction is no, fuck them, they're wrong. Or sometimes my reaction was, oh, maybe they're right, because I had such conflicting moments during that. I was like, I don't know, am I wrong? Like, am I falling off? Am I screwed? Is my project dead? Or at the same time, I'm like, no, it's not. I'm not giving up everything I did. I think the persistence on my end really comes from the fact that my artist name is my real name. Everything that happens with my project, good and bad, affects me on such a crazy level, because Ray Volpe is not an alias. It is me. And how I act online and how I act when I meet fans and stuff, it's not a persona. Like, it's literally me. Like, you've off camera, we've spent a lot of time together. You see how I am online, and it's the same person. And so when negative things happen, like that situation with the former management and all that, and having to hear that, it was killing me, because I'm like, this isn't something I could just throw away, because it's like I'm throwing away myself. That's what it felt like. You want me to throw away me, quit me, which I can't do. So I think that the main thing that helped me kind of piece myself together afterwards were two things. It was getting someone that believed in me, which was my current manager, Pat, who's an incredible person, as well as my girlfriend, Jess, who works on my project, who has worked in the industry for countless years now, maybe like 8 or 9 years or so. And she kind of stepped in and was like, hey, here's everything that like I feel like you can improve on, because she didn't want to take that step for a while. Dating in the industry, there's a lot of, it's easy to assume anything at that point, so she didn't want to overstep her boundary and be like, oh, like, I feel like you could be doing this better, that better, because she doesn't want to make it look strange on her end or to anyone else. But after I had the situation with my management and we separated, she was like, I feel like I could take this opportunity to be like, hey, I feel like you could do this, and this better. And she helped me change my outlook on a lot of things, and she helped me kind of piece myself back together mentally, as well as my entire career. Like, she really stepped in. So her and Pat was just actually having a long-term strategy goal list for me and stuff like that. Like it was stuff like that really, those two pieced me back together,
Yeah, Pat's a boss, and your girlfriend, she's like definitely had such a great touch on the project, and you can see that in the marketing and in the rollout of a lot of your campaigns and all of that.
Oh, for sure.
That was actually one of my next questions. Was having a great team is something that's so important for an artist, and we've talked about your journey to getting to that team that you feel confident with. How is finding that team that you trust and can depend on, how do you think that's like changed the overall trajectory of your career in general?
I think that was a game changer. I think that's what did everything for my career. I think that is night and day what changed everything, was having people that really believed me around me. Because I think the immediate reaction around when everything happened and I was in that kind of corner and of like, oh, is your project dead? I had talked to people not directly on the team, indirectly on the team, surrounding. And they all were like, yeah, I mean, well, I see what he's saying. And that was like, ooh, okay, the fuck? Like, no one was on the same page as me and Jess of like, no, it's not dead. I don't think the project ever was dead. I think really what it was is we live in this world where our attention spans are very tiny. And it's a business, everything's business, which I understand entirely. I think I was a little bit dirty, I was a little dusty, and instead of dusting me off and polishing it, they wanted to just throw it away and get a new one. That's what it was. That was the situation. But if you just cleaned me up a little bit, there's something really special there. They didn't want to go through that process, which I understand at the end of the day on the business side. But at the same time, I'm like, well, fuck that. I don't want to be part of that then. I need people around me that believe in me. It's my core. So when I had called Pat for the first time, which was that same day, I was like, hey, here's the situation I'm dealing with. I was very open with him about it. I was, because at the same time, you don't want to be shady. Like, hey, I was just looking for new management. It was like, hey, no, I was dropped. He said my project's dead. This is the problem. Like, because I got to be straightforward. And he laughed. He's like, your project's not dead. Are you serious? And that was a really awesome thing to hear, because that's the outside looking in at that point. Because I didn't know my current manager, Pat. I didn't know him before this. We had apparently connected in Australia the first time I went out there. The guy who does all the tours out there, he was having an engagement party. And so I went out and did, like, I was like saying hi to all of his friends basically, and apparently he was one of them. That's the extent of that interaction. Don't even remember that. And so the fact that, like, for someone from the entire outside of my life is sitting there telling me, "Hey, no, your project is not dead, and you're very talented, and I believe in you," that was amazing for me.
Yeah.
So that was a really big point. Just having a people that truly care and truly can see the full potential and don't look at it half glass empty. They look at it half glass full. They look at it very objectively and not subjectively, and they look at things in a way where we're not going to give up on you just because you get a couple scratches on you. It's kind of like when you had your games in the back in the day on PS2. I remember a couple of scratches on the disc, and it would start to act up on the game. But what we would do back then is we would have those disc cleaners, and we would put it in, and it'd spin around the disc, and then you put it in, and the game works again. But now, because of how people are and how everyone is these days, it starts to act up. You're like, all right, well, I'm gonna throw it out. Get a new one. But
Totally.
I'm glad that we didn't, and it's for having a team that really cares, as well as Peter, my my agent Peter. He came in towards the middle of the pandemic when literally no agency wanted to touch me, and also no agency was looking really too because of the pandemic. And he was like, "No, like, your project is sick. I would love to jump on." And I'm like, Peter, he's the most powerful person I've ever talked to. I love him so much, and I know that you firsthand have experienced Peter, and he's like,
Yeah, I
he's a
love
boss.
Peter. He's a good dude.
He's a really good
And
dude.
I also think that, like, the fact that you are your own persona, like Ray Volpe is you, and you are Ray Volpe, obviously. It's your real name. It's what you go by for your releases. Like, it's not something that, like, is something that you can just, like, reinvent yourself. It's like, it's not like you can just put, like, a mask on and all of a sudden be, like a marshmallow type of act. It's like you are Ray Volpe, and if the team can't see that, like, that's the the final product, then they probably weren't there from the beginning anyway. Like, the investment wasn't there for them.
Yeah, I'm yeah, you're right. It's very much like this is me, this is who I am, take it or leave it type thing. And I think what it is, I just we all collectively bet on myself. They all bet on me, and it's hard to do that. So I'm very grateful for everyone around me. Very, very grateful.
That's awesome.
Including you.
I'm grateful for you too, brother.
Including you, man. You've supported me. You've helped me. I appreciate that so much.
I look back at all the times that we've crossed paths, and that I've booked you on stuff, and it's like a great, like, steady rise, and like watching the fans grow and the crowds grow. It's been a really cool, as a promoter, it's really cool to see that from an artist.
Thank you. I think a steady rise is important, and I think that can also mess with some people's heads when you have any rises at all, and you have any jumps in trajectory or growth and stuff. So it could be hard to kind of maintain that, like, level head of, like, all right, keep it going. So I'm glad that we've seemingly done a good job of it so far.
Totally. Jumping up forward to your single Laser Beam, it went viral and received an overwhelming response from fans and the music community. Can you share how you felt during that time? And, like, what was the emotional impact of seeing your work resonate with such a large audience? And how did it affect your mental health and motivation moving forward?
It was split right down the middle of, like, extreme joy and gratefulness and, like, excitement, and then also so much fear and stress and anxiety. It was both basically on a constant basis, like, at all times. When it happened and it started taking off and I started seeing my name being mentioned all the time, it felt like I had finally done it. I was like, I did it. I've not did what I'm this isn't the final part of the story. This is the start, I finally had my start. That's what it felt like. It felt like this was the first major milestone and the first major chapter that's finally happening with the career. Is like, oh, okay, Laserbeam is here. People are enjoying it. People are playing it out like crazy. I've never experienced anything like that before. So to have all of that was so overwhelming. I was crying all the time, just of joy. I was crying on stage constantly. I was crying at home. I was freaking out, feeling so excited watching, people start to listen to my music more, and people start to mention me as one of their favorite artists more. It was the coolest, most amazing thing ever. I'm a fan at the end of the day. I'm a fan of music. So I have my list of my favorite artists, and I see the fans, I see their lists of their favorite artists, and I see that I'm not on those lists, or at least used to not be. And I remember being like, oh man, I really hope that I can be one day, because I love EDM. I have my own favorite list of dubstep artists and house artists, et cetera, et cetera. So start seeing that explosion was just mind blowing to me. It was surreal, because I'm like, man, that's me. That's my name. Like, you guys like me? That's so cool. Like, it was just a really, really cool feeling. It was very fulfilling. It made me feel like all the work that we had tried to do and undo from like prior habits that weren't working for the career and everything, and undo that mental situation with how everything was before, and all the work that we put in through the pandemic and such. Like, going through all that, it felt worth it. It felt like everything was finally worth it. It felt like everything worked out. And I've been making music at this point, when that happened, for 12 years. And I see some people that are like, I've been making music for 3 years and nothing is working. And it's like, whoa, like we gotta like slow down. We gotta
Have some
it's a
perspective.
process. Yeah, it's a process, and it might take some people. It does take 2-3 years, and those are anomalies. Some people just refuse to believe that, but those are anomalies. Sometimes it takes a lot longer. So I was really excited about that, and I felt very excited. But at the same time, on the other side, the stress and the anxiety and all of that just spiked. I couldn't make music for like 8 months. It was so bad, because I had felt all this new pressure, and I quickly got over the pressure of making Laser Beam 2, making a follow-up. That wasn't the pressure I was feeling. It was the pressure of like maintaining this excitement. It wasn't a follow-up situation. It wasn't like, oh, I need to, make the next Laser Beam now. It was more just like, oh man, how do I like keep this? How do I keep this going? How do I make people not forget who I am? How do I make people still remain to care until this blows over? How long is this going to last? Like, all these questions come into mind. So I start getting really anxious. I start getting like performance anxiety in terms of like production on music, as well as just more stressed out playing the shows, because I really want people to, because here's the thing, Laser Beam is a song. I'm an artist with multiple songs. So how do I know that they're going to go to my show? They're going to hear all the songs I play in my set, which a big chunk of it is my music. And then how do I know they're going to like it, and not just go for Laser Beam and then only like Laser Beam and they leave and they're like, oh, Laser Beam was cool, but the rest of the set was ass, Like, I'm worried about that. I start thinking about all these possibilities, all these what ifs, and it broke me down. I was stressed out. My time management was like out the window. Like, I didn't know how to like do anything, because things got busier. I was on the road more. I had more opportunities. I was doing more like things behind the scenes. I just got busier. So I was like, okay, I don't know how to do this. And it took me up until extremely recently to even have like time management in check. And I feel like half of it is like me delegating things to other people on my team, honestly, and like expanding the team and kind of pushing more onto them as things have grown on me, which is great, because I get to focus purely on music more. But it was really rough during the time as well. So it was equally like within a 10, there's moments where like Laser Beam like just got hit Billboard charts, and I'm stoked. I'm like literally tearing up because I would hit Billboard charts, which is insane for a bass artist to hit Billboard charts. And then like the same day, I'm like in Ableton and I can't get anything out, and I'm freaking out, and I'm having like a mental breakdown, because I'm like, I feel like I have imposter syndrome and I'm not supposed to be here. It happens like with a blink of an eye in the same hour sometimes, back throughout that whole year of 2022.
Isn't that crazy though? Like the self-talk that you can have with yourself, like during moments of highs and lows like that, where like you can be ruminating and like over and over again in your head about something that like really is almost like a non-issue, because like since then you've released more music. It's been very successful. The play counts are incredible. Like the sets have gotten bigger, the production's gotten bigger. It just feels like a lot of times we do that to ourselves.
100%. It's all in our own heads.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Sometimes like there's strategies to like reverse that self-talk. Other times I feel like that like self-talk can kind of be a little bit useful too, where it's like, you scrutinize a little bit more, and it makes you like realize maybe the next time, like, it makes it a little bit easier, I guess.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I think that there's definitely ways you can use that to your benefit. I don't do it enough.
Let's talk about, you said you face imposter syndrome. Is that something
Yeah.
you've dealt with throughout your whole career?
Yeah, I was dealing with it like 4 days ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
That comes and goes in waves. The imposter syndrome hits so hard. Um, I think especially because this isn't really a production podcast. This is definitely more for our mental health and our well being. But quickly on the production side of things, I'm not a very technical producer. I'm very much a go with your ear and your heart and what you're feeling and your emotions. And I don't produce with a lot of technical specific things when it comes to like dynamics or stereo imaging and all these terms that like I don't even know the definitions to. I don't know any music theory. I just go with what sounds right to me. I know very basic things that you maybe everyone needs to know, but basically after that surface level, a lot of it is kind of not it's not as much of my focus. It never has been. So because of that, when I have a successful moment, I feel like I start thinking about everyone that is, because there's a lot of producers that are super technical that know everything. I'm like, fuck, they know everything. I don't. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like they should be here. Like, what? Like I feel like I'm an outcast in a room sometimes, and it's nothing at all on a personal front with anybody because I'm friends with all these people. These are all people that I love talking to, I love getting along with, and joking with, and seeing at shows and making music with, even. But then I like compare myself just from like a knowledge standpoint or anything like that. And I'm like, oh man, I'm not. I suck. That's how I start to feel basically, and I get in my head about it really bad.
Totally. But I mean, like, it's kind of like that cliche saying, like, there's many ways to skin a cat, you know?
100%. I always say there's like 40 routes to the same destination. You can take the highway, you can take the back roads. You know, it's just there's so many different ways to get to the same place, and that is making a song. So I try to remind myself of that, but sometimes it's really hard, and it makes me like unable to create anything. It gets so bad.
Yeah, I get that. I also wonder how many of your counterparts look at you and they say, like, oh man, I wish I could design my synths and drums and, sounds like Ray does, you know?
Yeah, I was just talking. I was in a studio session with Mersive, and it was the first time we ever hung out and met. Super
Hmm.
super sweet guy. We got along really well, and he knows a lot more on the technical front than I do. And so we were talking about that, and he was like, "Dude, I actually like feel like I'm learning a couple things from you on how you really do so much less on that technical side that like it stops you from like overworking in certain areas, because sometimes people that are super technical, maybe they like overmix or like they overthink something in this certain element, and then it like can hinder things. So he was like actually stoked on like watching how I was working and processing sounds and how simple I kind of made everything. So he was like, when he was stoked about it and he expressed that to me, I was like, oh no way, like you're stoked about this? Okay, sick. Like that made me feel really, really good. It kind of helped me snap out of my imposter syndrome actually a little bit. So shout out to Anderson Mercive. It was really cool.
That's great. Yeah, there's something we can learn from everyone, you know?
100%.
It also reminds me, there's a quote I saw from your tweet. There's like a reply that you were tweeting in like 2021. I think it was something to Zeke Beats about like comparison. And it says, the moment I stopped comparing myself to acts of a similar size was the moment my confidence grew and mental health also upgraded, which I really love reading that. How do you practice that, like non-comparison and not comparing yourself to others?
I think you have to force yourself. I think you have to force yourself too. I think the way that you do that is you kind of like get the fake it till you make it, because it's very easy to get jealous. It's very natural to get jealous. It's so normal. It's human nature to feel that like competitiveness with people, because while we all have that passion for music, it's also like a business where we're all kind of fighting for the same spots on, festivals or whatever it might be. So I have to force myself to fake it till you make it in that way, where I'm like, if I'm jealous of someone, I try to go out of my way to like make sure I make it clear that I'm happy for them, because I am happy for them. I'm
Hmm.
happy for, but do that so I can like get that mindset out of like like that comparison feeling. So I'll put myself in a situation where I'm like, no, I want to make sure that I like wish these people well, or like I support the people, because I do want to support, of course. So I will make sure that I put that first, and I make that very apparent. That way, those like that comparison thought kind of goes in the back of your head and then disappears. So you then compare yourself as much. Like, there's artists that I've felt that way throughout my career where I've done that, and then now there's not even a little bit of like that comparison feeling of anything like that.
Yeah, I relate a lot. There's this phrase called sympathetic joy,
Hmm.
and it's like when you feel joy in the success of others.
Yeah,
And I've
you
practiced
have
that a
that.
lot. I really I've tried so hard to practice that because like I used to find myself getting like jealous and feeling like I'm in competition
Yep,
with others. And like over the years I've realized that number one, like we're all on our individual path and like
100%.
it's so non-linear and yeah, they may cross at times, but like for the most part, you know, we're definitely kind of on our own.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
and there's plenty of room for everybody to succeed, you know.
Yeah,
Especially when you're hardworking and you know you're authentic. It's like it opens up a lot of doors and you know.
absolutely does. It helps everybody. I think that's another thing too. More maybe less on the genre specific side of comparison, but like on the broader scale, I sometimes see people openly hate just purely on sound, not on personal fronts. Just on sonically, they hate other artists in or like maybe talk crap about publicly other artists in EDM. And I'm like, that's crazy because these people become successful, these other artists, and that helps everybody because
Yeah,
you know, like you have your people that are like like Marshmallows in Fortnite. That gets so many people's eyes that don't listen to EDM onto Marshmallow, and then
hmm,
Marshmallow has done collaborations with people in dubstep, and that will cross over. And yeah, maybe it's a small percentage, but that small percentage of crossover comes over to dubstep. They start going to Lost Lands. They might see my set and they become a fan of me. They're like, oh, he made a song with Marshmallow, stuff like that. Or it helps. It just helps EDM. It just helps as a whole. So when I see that sometimes those comparisons get to that like point of like hatred, it's so interesting to me because I'm like, this is good for everybody. Like at the end of the day, like we want as many people to enjoy this as possible, you know?
especially in EDM where like
Yeah,
we're a very small genre in the grand scheme of music and
absolutely. People don't realize that.
yeah, and like, artists like Marshmello have done so much to push this genre forward, you know, and like he's such a good dude where like it even comes back to like, you know, his whole collab with Sudden Death and like touring that collab, like he doesn't have to do that, you
Yeah,
know?
see, people don't realize that he doesn't need to do that. Like he's
Yeah.
doing pop songs. He made songs with Selena Gomez and Khalid. Like, why does he need to come back to do stuff with Sudden Death and like Samplifier and do these awesome like dubstep, community collabs? Like, there's no requirement for that.
Yeah,
And
I
it shows
respect
like, hey,
that.
we're like it's really cool to see that type of stuff. Honestly, it's amazing.
Totally. You've talked about how you have ADHD. Is that
Hmm.
true?
Yes, it is.
I've noticed that ADHD is something that is prevalent in the creative demographics, and studies even show that college students with ADHD score higher than non ADHD peers on two tasks that tapped conceptual expansion and the ability to overcome knowledge constraints. Do you feel that ADHD has been a helpful trait for you as a creator?
I think so. I think it's helped me and it's went against me too. I think it kind of depends on the situation, but I definitely think that I sometimes call I sometimes call it my superpower because
Hmm.
it I was on medication for a little bit to help it and to kind of quiet that down, and I feel like it was really messing with me creatively. Actually, it was kind of killing like any ideas that I could have, or like I think that I just work so because I work so sporadically. I I I come up with ideas at like 3 a.m. or sometimes I don't work for 6 months and I come up with like I didn't work on music for like maybe 4 or 5 months before I made song request. Something like that. And that ended up being that's was tracking it's like bigger than Laserbeam at this point, which is crazy. It's wild.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I that came out of nowhere. So I work very sporadically. I work very randomly. I have these spurts and bursts of energy creatively, and I think that my ADHD does help that a lot. Actually, I regret going on medication for it, even though it messes with me with other things because I feel like I have like tunnel vision on things, and like I'm really bad with getting outside like tasks done and stuff like that. I struggle with a lot of those things. So I was like, I need to get those done. I need to get that taken care of. But I feel like I regret that now.
Like, wasn't there something about on your socials about like hanging up those posters on your wall? Like,
Like,
wasn't didn't that
yeah,
take a long time?
this took this took like I think doing this took like 6 months longer than it should. You know,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
also I should point out, not to say that I don't think that people shouldn't take medication for ADHD. It just didn't work out for me. I think for some people it might help them a lot and they need it. I think for me it just wasn't. I'm like in full support of people getting medication if they need to be. You know?
Yeah, and I have ADHD too, and in high school when I was diagnosed, they tried like every single ADHD medicine, and it just all of them turned me into like a zombie. And
Yeah, see
so
some people. Yeah, some people it's turn them into zombies. Yeah, I've
yeah,
heard.
so it didn't work for me, and I did the trade off of being a little bit sporadic is worth being myself and feeling like myself. So
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on the person, like on and what they need to do in their lives and what they want to do in their lives. I think for some, it's like for us, it's not helpful, but for some, that's going to help them so much. Just like get to where they need to be.
totally, yeah, it's good that it's there.
100%.
You've previously also talked about your struggles with anxiety, and personally, I've also battled a ton of anxiety over the years. I've done a good job of overcoming them, in my opinion, but I know how tough that can be, especially for someone who's constantly traveling and performing in front of large crowds. How have you learned to cope with your anxiety, and do you ever feel like it's coming back in specific situations?
So that's the one I struggle with that. I feel like the most out of everything because I get so anxious over every little thing. Everything for me is end of the world, no matter what it is. Like
Like catastrophizing.
it's oh, yes, literally. It's anytime maybe a song streams just a little bit less than I wanted it to. I'm like I'm falling off. It's like my first thought. Like I think that my career is over. I think that like no one cares anymore. If and I think the other problem to see this comes in with comparing and stuff too, because like that's where the anxiety kind of comes in because if I, put a show on sale and then it doesn't like go crazy in the first, day sales wise, I'm like, oh man, what did I do wrong? But nothing. The whole world is late buying. Like tickets, like there's anomalies where people do sell extremely quickly, but those are anomalies.
Hmm.
But so I get very anxious just trying to manage that. And then I also get aware that like I feel like it's performance anxiety with music is a big thing too. I start getting anxious because I need to make music for this. I know that is coming up, and then there's a deadline there, and then that stops me entirely. Like I open Ableton, I start getting like really scared. Like I start like I'm like it starts looking like it's like separate to the imposter syndrome. It starts looking like I'm looking at like foreign language when I open up Ableton. It starts looking like I'm looking at Microsoft Excel or something. Well, I know Excel, but like I don't know. I can like any program I'm not versed in, like I
Hmm.
start looking like I'm in that. I'm like, what's the deal here? I get so caught up in that, and I start feeling like it's like tight and and like it gets really really rough. I start to get like ringing in my ears sometimes if it gets bad enough, and I'm like like my heart starts racing. I start stuttering like crazy. It gets like really 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 bad, and I don't know how to cope with it. Honestly, I still don't know how to cope with it. I don't have an answer to that. But I guess that's also like as much of a bad thing that is. It's also like a neutral / good thing to show like, hey, like you can get through it. Like I'm
Right.
here making I hope to say at least successful career with myself and um even fighting through it all, like make it work.
Yeah, I mean, you've made it through every anxiety attack and situation so far, and you've come out on top, and you're growing through it all. So clearly, you're doing something right.
No, thank you. I thankfully I haven't had anything really bad anxiety wise on the road, like or in hotels that I can believe it, or like at festivals or shows. It's always been at home, studio based, or like maybe surrounding topics with my team regarding things on the career for the future. I think the future scares me. I think that's a huge thing for me. I think that the future terrifies me, so I slow down in my life because of it, and then I like internalize it all, and I panic and start to go. It's that catastrophizing thing that you were mentioning. Like I do that. Everything's in the world, and I just assume everything's going to fall apart, and then that stops me from being able to do anything, and I shut down. I shut down at like the smallest thing. It's like really bad. It's really
Yeah,
bad.
but I also think that it's maybe something. It's a sign that you care so much. It's like
Definitely.
in a good way though. It's like you care about putting out the best piece of work, and about performing at your highest, and being the best you can be. It's like with those expectations for yourself, like you know um there's going to be some stress in that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because I think like for me, I've seen sometimes where people are like, "Hey, I want to do this," and it's like, oh, "Okay, well, we can't afford to do that, so we can do it on a smaller scale." And then maybe some people are like, "Well, I don't want to do it. Then it's not worth it. It's not going to look good. I'm not doing it." And then they move on, or maybe they're
Hmm.
upset, but that's it. For me, I'm like, if we do it on a smaller scale, it's going to look really bad, and then everyone's going to like laugh at me and judge me, and like I start freaking out. I start getting so anxious, and I start literally panicking, and I start being so scared, and I started thinking it's like everything's gonna fall apart, and I shut down. It's not even a situation like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore, because I'm like, I still want to do it. I'm like, no, like what do we do? What do we do? How do we fix this? Like what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And I don't actually think of any solutions. Literally I just literally freak out.
Yeah. So what are your overall mental health strategies? Maybe not so much in those moments, but just to keep yourself from,
I think
going.
walking is a big one.
Hmm.
Walking. I walk very often when I'm at home. Not as much as I should recently. Just being on home from tour has been a little bit harder to like get in and out of those habits. But when I was really bad, 2021, 2022, I was walking every day, like twice a day, 45 minutes per walk session. It clears your head. It helps you think. It helps you get at ease. Also, I would do a lot of just things that are outside of music to try to calm me down, like I think that playing games like really helps, because like I get to shut my brain off from, because the thing, something I think about which is kind of weird, is that while this is a passion and this is the thing I am born to do for the rest of my life, and I love doing more than anything in this world, it's a job. It's become a job, so you have to think about it as a job in a lot of different aspects. So to stop thinking work mode and start just playing games, or even making music that's not meant for me, not meant to be given to other people, but just making music that's like other genres that I don't ever make and I'll never put out. Like I make
Hmm.
rock music for fun. I make a bunch of rock. I program the drums, I program in the guitars, I sing on them, and I write full on like kind of post hardcore metalcore type tunes, and I do that for fun because I love it. And that's for me, and it's like very I'm not sure the word. It's very just like it helps. Yes, very cathartic. Yes, yeah.
Hmm. I
It's
could see that for sure. It's like first of all, I would love to hear. I know that you've used vocals on your tracks many times, but like and I've also known that like everybody on every podcast has asked you that they would love to hear you like do vocals live. So I'll
yeah.
I'll join that train, and push you to you know do those vocals in a live set.
I don't think
But
I think I've become more open to it over time. I think
yeah,
it definitely started off as like no, there's no
yeah.
world I'll do it, but I think that maybe someday.
It would be pretty cool. But yeah, and just in general of just creating to create and without expectations, it's like a really healthy habit, like
That's been a huge one for me
sometimes
recently.
yeah, I like go and paint, and
Oh, awesome.
like try and make these big canvases, and it's like no one really sees them or anything, but for me it just feels so good to like be creative.
Absolutely, and just like let it out and not have to worry about like why you're doing this. It's not commissioned art. You're just doing it for yourself.
Hmm. You've been touring all over the world. It seems like almost every continent at this point.
I think
How do
I've hit almost every single one. That's crazy.
It's awesome. How do you balance traveling and production? And what are some of your strategies when you are feeling the creative block?
So when I'm on the road, I don't work on music too much when I'm traveling. I work on edits usually for the set when I'm traveling, like little live flips, or like little like maybe transition double drop ideas, stuff like that. But a few times I do get ideas for songs on the road, and it's usually when it's close to a festival, like the day before the festival, and the set's already done. I'm like, all right, well, I just came up with this idea, so I'm gonna make it. It's always like a burst of inspiration surrounding big shows. That's kind of what
Hmm.
it is for me. Otherwise, I'm not working too much on production. At least when I'm traveling, usually when I'm home. I think that that's shifting a little bit because I've been on the road a lot more. That I've become a little more susceptible to being like, all right, I have like this idea. I'm gonna try making this, and it's come up a bit more recently, which I'm very grateful for. Something I'm kind of adjusting to currently. And as for the creative blocks that come in, I think it's just uh, taking those breaks when needed, taking those breaks when I need to, trying to make sure that I don't ever force it out, because that's never going to help anyone. And also, I think a big thing is environment. A lot of people don't think about it, and I was rejecting that for the longest time. Changing my environment, and I changed it. So like this was a bedroom, now it's a studio. We have like a whole bunch of stuff in here.
Yeah,
And
the
if
vibes.
it's a vibe, it's a good vibe, and it's not even a music studio. That's the thing. It doesn't feel like a music studio. Like I have the CDJ plaque and the posters, but I have an X-Men comic. I have more comics down there. I have an LED light. I'm on like the most. I have a. It's like a gaming setup. It's I have what's it called, the Stream Deck from Elgato. I have Elgato key lights. Like I literally feel like I'm a gamer. I'm a Twitch streamer gamer. But that's kind of the vibe I like. So it makes me feel really good. And I feel like I've made more music because of it. And then separately, my team has been begging me to go to the studio because we have access to studios through my publisher at Ultra. And I've
Mhm.
been putting it off. I was putting it off for the longest time. I was like, no, I don't want to go. It's like 40 minutes away. I'm like, like LA, 40 minutes, like forever for me. So I'm like, I don't want to deal with it. And
Yeah,
then finally I go in and I start doing these sessions and I start sitting down even just by myself or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I love this. It's like it's just a different vibe that changes up, and it helps so much. The environment made it so much easier to create ideas, and because of that, in the past like week and a half, I've had like 6-7 new ideas, which is amazing. It makes me excited because we're preparing for a tour and I needed new music. So I'm
yeah,
like, this is good timing. But it's definitely like an environment thing that a lot of people don't think about. And I think people, if they're struggling, maybe they need to go to a coffee shop. Maybe they need to go to like a WeWork. I know artists that work at a WeWorks. They just
I'm
put
at a
headphones
WeWork
on.
right now.
You're at WeWork right now. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. No, when I have, I working from home over the pandemic was really tough. I went from being in a WeWork, and then we gave that up when everyone shut down, and luckily I was able to get back in here about a year and a half ago, and
Awesome.
it changes my whole workflow. It's like you have your own space that's away from home to create and to work hard, and it definitely makes a world of the difference. And like I know I've been with friends in proper studios too before. It's like there's something about like the energy of how much music has been created in those rooms, like
I think,
walking.
yeah, it does. There's like an aura to it. It's something different. It just feels. It feels so nice when you're in there, and
Yeah,
I think it
walking like.
also.
Go ahead.
Oh, you go.
I was just gonna say like walking the halls with like plaques on them, and like
Yeah, you
seeing
see,
who's been in that studio before. It's
it's
pretty inspiring.
it's very inspiring, and even for me as someone that has like major imposter syndrome all the time, I'm even looking at it like, how the hell am I here? But I sit down and I'm like, all right, something's happening.
You put your $2,000 MacBook on a $20,000 like
Literally, I don't touch
controller
any of.
thing. Yeah,
I don't touch any of the boards, the hardware. I was
yeah,
making
yeah.
jokes when I was first in the Ultra Studios because they put me in Studio A, which is like their most expensive, crazy, decked out.
It's got
There's
all the
so,
bells and whistles.
like the monitors that they use, the speakers are like 20,000 each, or for the pair, something like that. Ridiculous. They have subs under there like 10 a piece, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this does, but let's get to work. Put my laptop on the desk and just plug in, and I'm good.
Yep, yep. You guys got a 1/4 inch jack or what?
Yeah, which is the craziest part is they actually do if you have a second
Hmm.
laptop. So someone plugs into the dock with a Thunderbolt cable, and then they have access to the monitors and all the hardware and stuff. But then if you want a second person to have access to the speakers, they have a fucking aux cable, and I'm
That's
like, this is
amazing.
crazy.
Toss me the aux.
Toss me the aux.
I want to talk a little bit about burnout. Is there any burnout is really common among artists and even in just any, entertainment industry sector, like in my field, it's very common. Have you experienced burnout? And if so, how did you recognize it and how did you recover from it?
I think I was getting some major burnout after the Legend of the Volpetron tour. So after Laserbeam, we toured on with the EP that was from, and I was doing 3 shows a weekend, sometimes 4, and then sometimes 2. But it killed me. It was really rough at the end because uh, I've done tours before. I've toured every year, and something about that one because they were all headlines and that repetitive. There's a stress that you don't get when you're supporting an artist on tour, because your job is basically to show up and play. But when it's your headline show and you're doing that many, there's a lot more. You're stressed out about the ticket count. You're stressed out, do the lasers work, which they never did at every show. There was always an issue. Like, you're stressed out about media. You're stressed out about the marketing of the show. Because even though your team is there to handle all that, I guess there's also differences there where, like, some artists are super hands off. They don't know a thing about what's going on. They make music, they show up, they plug in, they play. I'm very hands on. I want to know everything. Every day, I would love to know the ticket counts. We don't get them every day. Sometimes it's like once a week, sometimes it's twice a week, sometimes every 2 weeks, depending on the promoter. But I want to know everything. I want to know how many tickets we sold. I want to know how the ads are performing. I want to know how many lasers do we have for the show? How many watts are the lasers? You know, like, I want to know all this information. And being aware of all that adds so much stress. So, like, I think that I got super burnt out by the end of that tour because I had all this information that I needed to know, and it was very stressful. It was a very successful tour, but it's still stressful to be part of it and make sure that the show goes smoothly. And so after it, I was done. I couldn't. I think I had nearly pulled out of the Keizo tour that following year. I believe that was the following year. Yeah. I almost pulled out of the tour. He doesn't know that. No one knows that. But I remember there was a point where we were going to pull. And the really awesome thing, which I think actually almost kind of inspired me to keep going, was kind of the solution to that, was almost, and he wasn't bluffing, let me make that clear. It wasn't a bluff situation. It was very genuine. Is Pat, my manager, was like, if you want to pull, like, we're pulling it. If you're not feeling good, we're pulling it. And when he said that to me, it showed that he really cared about me, because obviously managers care about their clients, you know, obviously. Pat's like one of my best friends. He's going to be in my wedding when it happens. Like, he's a part of my life forever. But obviously there's that element of business there. Like, he, you know, takes a commission and a percentage of my earnings, and it's a business and it's work. So for him to, without any question or hesitation, just cut out so much money for like 3 months of touring or whatever it was, without any questions or hesitation, I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna do the tour. I felt like, I was like, because it just showed to me that he, like, what he cared about, what his priorities were. His priorities were me and my well-being, and not what was in his pocket at that point in time. And that's
a good manager.
That's an incredible manager. And he still to this day has that mindset of, if it's too much, just let me know. You know, like, he doesn't care what, obviously he cares, but like, it doesn't matter what bridge will burn or whatever. It's like, my well-being is like very important to him, and my mental health and how I'm feeling and everything. So something like that is so important. And when he said that, when there was that zero hesitation in his voice at all, because I would have picked up if he was like, you know, I would have, you know, immediately been like, all right, like let's talk about it. But I think it was just that immediate no hesitation to me that I was like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. You know?
Yeah.
I think it was that. That's like the weird thing that like really clicked for me to like kind of get out of that burnout a little bit, as well as just trying to not. I think I intentionally took time out of like not opening Ableton for like maybe like 2 months. I like just didn't open anything. I didn't even try other music and stuff. I just took myself out of the situation for a little bit, because thankfully, as you grow as an artist, something that you have to do is have the future planned out. You need to have like releases scheduled, maybe not 100% finished, but you need them like, you need a roadmap like a year out at least, you know, to know
Totally.
what you're doing. So like, we had known what we were planning it out to do for the rest of the year. So I was like, all right, I can chill for a little. And I just I didn't even open anything, and I didn't try to. And I think that also helped. It was like those two things.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a situation like that, it makes me think about the saying, like, when you're in the middle of a river of blood, just keep going, you know? It's like, you gotta, you know, there's, you can go one way or the other, but you're gonna have to find your way out, you know?
100%.
And so I really respect that for you for finishing that, and also, you know, kind of alleviating some of those pressures at the moment, so that you could, you know, finish without the stressors of like also trying to produce during that time too. Going back all the way to high school, you've talked in some podcasts about, you know, you were bullied in high school, and that led to you dropping out and you finished with your GED. How do you think that affected you? Do you think that gave you some resilience in a type of way that has helped you become a little bit undeterred in such a tough industry?
Yeah, I think so. I think it definitely it's it's one of those weird things. Actually, I didn't get my GED, by the way. I wanted to. I never got a
Okay,
chance to. I really wanted
got it.
to.
Got it. You got your GED in EDM.
Yeah, I got my GED in EDM. I did want to.
Masters.
I still would like to. I would like to. I want to at some point when I have the time. But just so I have it. It'll make me feel good. But I think that it definitely helped me. It shaped me a little bit of like, all right, like know what to expect in terms of like certain personalities maybe, or like certain like don't take things personally maybe as much as I want to and stuff like that. Getting into the industry, because obviously like I don't know, but at the same time like I think some people portray the industry to be like way worse than it is, but then sometimes it is that bad. It just depends, on like your experience or the situation. Um, I think high school really kind of set me up to just want to prove people wrong. That's been my whole life, is really proving people wrong, proving people that were rude to me or mean to me or picked on me wrong, and then prove people in the industry wrong as well when things maybe didn't go my way towards the later ends of 2019, early 2020.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely gives you a little thicker skin too.
Yeah, I think barely thicker for me because I'm still a sensitive baby, but I think it definitely made me a little bit thicker skin. I still take everything to heart, but I try to remind myself not to.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do you deal with haters now? Because it seems like everybody, in the EDM, especially like EDM Twitter, it's like everyone's a critic now. They all think they work for Pitchfork or Rolling Stone.
Yeah, everyone's
They got an
a
opinion.
critic.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that?
A lot of it I laugh at now.
Yeah.
A lot of it I laugh at now. I used to not. Now I think now a lot of it I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about, and then I just keep scrolling, or like I laugh because I'm like, what is this take? Or I'm like, what, like I'm like, I get sometimes I'm just mind blown. I think a lot of it's entertaining now.
It is. It's so unwarranted. Yeah, yeah.
It's like random. Like it just makes no sense at all, and I'm like, all right, this is like, I'm like, you obviously don't know what's going on, so like it doesn't. Most of it doesn't affect me. I think it's the ones where there's like no explanation, because there's always like a weird explanation, and it like doesn't add up. And you're like, you're weird. But then it's the ones that just are just so just straightforward. Like, he sucks. I'm like, well, fuck, why? Because then I'm like, man, what did I do? Like, why does my music suck so much? Because like, there's not like an explanation, even if it's a stupid explanation, then I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I know I can write that off. It's when there's the unknown there. I'm like, oh.
Totally. Have you ever responded to anyone? Sometimes I've seen artists like respond with something like that kind of humanizes them, and all of a sudden the keyboard warrior backs down pretty sharply.
There's definitely moments where I've responded and people like flip. Sometimes because people just want a response and they're like, "No, man, I was just joking." That happens for sure.
Yeah.
And there's some people where maybe you say something that humanizes yourself a little bit, and they're like, "Oh man, he like read that and like knows that he's like a human being."
Right.
Like he's on Twitter as much as I am, type thing. And then they like maybe apologize or whatever. But sometimes I've also responded just trying to correct people, because sometimes people have just like wrong takes. It was actually at the Detroit show where somebody tried to accuse me of not DJing. He was being a massive hater on Reddit. Massive hater. He's like, he didn't put his headphones on. He was they admit I'm touching the decks. He's like, he's not touching his headphones at all. And I was like, dude, like, I don't need headphones. And I was explaining how I DJ, and he was like, all right, we get it. Because he said I wasn't DJing. He's like, all right, but we get it, you're DJing. And I'm like, that was the whole. He's like, I'm just critiquing you. And I'm like, critiquing what? You said I wasn't DJing. Like, some people like stand by their guns. I try to only reply though if it's a objective correction versus a subjective feeling, because there's no point to fight with anyone that has a subjective opinion, because anyone that can think whether I think they should voice it or not. I think people have their own opinions on what's good and what's not good, but I think it's when it's like something objective like that, they should be corrected. That's about it though.
Yeah, I agree. It's hilarious. I saw that in the I think you tweeted about it or something. It made it from Reddit to Twitter. And I was like, man, I felt like responding myself.
Was this you? Was it you that was the hater on? Because you
Yeah,
were
yeah,
at that show.
that was my alt. Yeah,
That was
my
your
alt
alt.
account. Yeah, yeah. Definitely not. You're self-described as straight edge and you're sober. What led to that choice, and how does that help or hinder your career, and how does that impact your personal life?
I think so it was never really a choice, I guess, for me. Growing up, my parents were like, "Hey," I think they were just realistic, which I do appreciate. They were like, "Look, we know you're gonna drink as a teenager. We know you're gonna go out and do stupid shit. Here's the stuff we really think you should avoid." And they're like naming like cocaine or whatever. They're like, "Here's the stuff that you probably really should never do, in our opinion.
Mhm.
If you're gonna do anything, please call us. Let us know. We can pick you up. Don't do anything stupid, like stuff like that." Like they were very like they were against it, but very much like, we know shit's gonna happen because you're a kid surrounded by other kids. I took that as like, all right, well, probably shouldn't do those things. Like I think because I think it's not everybody, but there's a large amount of the population that has that rebellion phase. They like, fuck you, mom. I'm gonna go and drink now because you don't want me going out. And it's like, my parents weren't like that. So I think because of that, I didn't have that rebel, like, urge. So I never did. And then it never interested me. When I saw people smoking weed and stuff, I was like, that doesn't look interesting to me. Like none of it just like, it never appealed to me. So that's like a other thing too, where if it appealed to me, maybe I still would have done all the stupid stuff. It's not stupid, but like, well, some of it's stupid for sure. Weed's not. I don't think weed is stupid. I didn't get into any of it, so I never cared. I literally never, into this day, I've never been curious to be like super high or like super drunk. It just doesn't. It doesn't like hit me. I think it doesn't hinder my career at all. I think that. I think because obviously, very obviously, like electronic music, the community, there's a lot of drug use recreationally. Hopefully people are being safe, testing their stuff and doing the right things there. But I don't know if people think that it's like the same way backstage, but it's like, it's not. People drink and
Mhm.
stuff, but like, it's not like fucking crazy drug fest. Like I've still people, I think people think that it's like that. But so people don't really care that I'm straight edge backstage. Like it's like, some people when they meet me for the first time, it's like, "Oh, you want to drink?" Or like, I'm like, "I'm good." And they're like, "Cool." And that's the extent of it. I've never had any peer pressure. I had peer pressure all throughout high school. Never had it once from the industry.
Yeah,
Once.
it probably creates a lot of introspective in the person asking you, because it's like
Yeah.
a lot of people, kind of aren't comfortable with their own use of drugs or alcohol, and when they meet someone who's like so, confidently sober, it's like almost like they have to justify what they're doing.
Yeah, and I know some people, they maybe need to rely on it a little bit to be social, but like I yap, I'm a yapper. Like I talk, I could talk for hours to anybody. So like maybe they need some help because they have social anxiety and stuff like that. So sometimes I've talked to people and they're like, you don't do anything? I'm like, no. And they're like, damn, how do you talk to people? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm good. And they're like, dude, that's really sick. So like it's actually caused a lot of like positive connections with people because they're like not jealous, but maybe they're like, oh, like, damn, like I wish I was like that. And it's caused some really cool connections, honestly, in terms of career. And sometimes I get to joke with people because like I'll be like, "Yo, let me get a hit of that weed," and they're like, "There's Ray joking
Yeah,
around. He's not
yeah,
gonna smoke it." And then on the other hand, in my personal life, I do think it hindered some parts of my life, actually, honestly, because as social as I am, and as socially aware as I am, and self-aware, and all that, I think it killed this part of me. Like, so I didn't go to college and I dropped out of high school, so like I didn't go to parties. I've never been to like a house party. I don't think ever. Maybe like one. I was like an Icon Collective house party because I like was staying with my old manager who lived over there and like the same complex. I just went to one real quick. But like that doesn't really count. I feel like I've never been to like the Red Solo Cup house party. That like I think they look like what they look like in movies. That's how I've never been to one because I've
yeah,
never like I that's what it looks like to me because I've never been. So like I think that takes out some social interactions that are like maybe useful in life and growing up a bit and having those certain interactions. I never had any of those. And then also like because of that, I fucking hate going to bars or anything like that. And like
yeah,
so I like hate going out. Like nightlife is like so boring to me. And like so when I first got into like my relationship, obviously like drinking recreationally or whatever, like going to I'll get a couple drinks, like I'll go with her. But like I'm stoked to go home. And it's,
Yeah.
but I'd be as supportive as I can, obviously, in those instances. We don't really go out though. We sit at home, hang out, but, it's stuff like that, at least, like where it's like, oh man, like I wish I was different in that way. Sometimes I wish I had a little bit of interest, at least, because I don't think there's anything wrong with drinking. Everything's in moderation.
Totally.
As long as it's not ruining your life and damaging your life or anything like that. But I wish sometimes, like, damn, I wish I could. But I'm like, not for me. It's just never.
Yeah, I really respect that. I'm going
Thank
through like
you.
a little sober curious phase of my life right now too, and it's been really nice. Yeah.
That's awesome that you found it helpful.
Yeah, for sure. It's not necessarily something that's gonna be permanent, but like I really like experimenting with things and like being sober and reestablishing like a baseline that's not like reliant on something to kind of influence it like a drug or alcohol or anything like that. It's like
Definitely. I think it's cool for people that do mess with like any type of recreational stuff, like drinking or smoking or whatever, like to have those sober kind of phases in their lives. I think that's really cool because it helps you just like it's just phases of your life, like recalibrating and stuff like that. And then you can
yeah,
go
you
back out
realize you
and
don't
party
need it.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And as far as those like high school parties and stuff goes, it's like a lot of people I know that were like partying the hardest in high school, they never stopped, and like that can be really toxic. So I don't think you're
Yeah,
missing
that's
much.
true. That's true. Like I'm gonna be 30 in 3 years. I don't know.
You're still young.
I'm chilling. I'm getting
Yeah.
there.
We can go to a house party together and run from the
Yeah.
cops or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the vibe. I'm down.
What are some goals of yours of the future, both short term and long term? And are there any specific projects or milestones that you're aiming for?
Definitely. I think short-term goals are to sell out the dates on my upcoming tour. I don't think I'm going to sell out 100% of the shows realistically, but I think selling more than I did last time is always the goal in every market, and that's the goal there. And also I think another short-term goal for me would be to I don't know. Short-term goals, that's basically the main one is like, I
Should
think
we leak the Chicago date?
should we? When does this air?
Probably on Tuesday.
Tuesday? Oh, you can tell them. Maybe
I think
we'll.
that's enough right there. Just,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now they
Chicago
just know
date.
it's there. Yeah, I'll even say Concord Music Hall. We just won't say the date.
There we go.
There
I
you
love
go.
that.
That's enough info.
There will be lasers.
There will be, and I'm gonna have a panic attack about it.
No, we're gonna get it right.
Yeah, he's actually gonna hand set them up himself, each
For
and
sure.
every
I'm
one,
operating the lasers that
operating
night.
them, turning them on,
Yeah,
every
yeah.
single thing.
Yep.
It's all thanks to you. But that's short term is the tour. I think long term is finishing my health journey that's been on pause for too long. I basically did it for 2 years and then gave up. I honestly
What does
gave
that
up
look
as
like? Like your health journey?
losing weight is a big one. I lost weight and then I lost like 35 pounds, something like
Yeah,
that.
you look great, man.
And I put like 10 back on, so I'm
But
looking rough.
you still look really good, dude.
Thank you. I'm not happy about it. So that is a big one. It's hard. It's hard because the anxiety, the ADHD, like the ADHD alone makes it hard for me to remember to like go on walks half the time and do things because I'm like, I'll do that like after I do this thing, and then it like takes over. But then I get in my head, and then it just doesn't ever happen. It's like a combination of all these things, and then also when you're on the road, I don't know how people go to the gym on the road. I don't know how the fuck Kai Wachi goes to the gym when he's on the road at every show. Because I'm like, when I travel and I fly, I want to go to bed, get ready for the show, play, then go to bed. So I don't know how the hell he does that. And like Excision takes care of himself on the road. Like all these other artists go take care of themselves on the road. I'm like Lays takes care of herself on the road. I'm like, how you guys doing this shit? But then at the same time, I'm like, well, I never took care of myself growing up. So I'm like at negative 100, where these people obviously were like, at least to my knowledge, all these people were in shape for all their lives. So it's maybe a bit easier. It's a big mental block for me. So I think that's a big long-term goal, is getting back on track with that physical health wise. And also a big long-term goal for me is to just take this project to the next level outside of music in another form. Whether that's through YouTube, or through podcasting or whatever it is. I feel like I have a lot to offer for the music side, and I want to continue to do that forever, but I want to expand out of that. I want to expand out of that in some way, shape, or form, because I think I can.
Multimedia.
Yeah, I feel it. So that's a big one for me. I don't really talk about but I want to do. Yeah.
That's great. And yeah, and the physical health thing, it's like definitely it seems like when you look at like artists that are, you know, hitting the gym in the morning on tour and stuff, and you're like, how the fuck are they doing that? It's like really it takes like a week of doing that, and you'll never want to go back to not doing it, you know?
No, yeah, I bet. I know. It's like having to crack. It's like a habit. That's all. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And then you also like start seeking out gyms seeking out hotels because of the gym they have, and like, you know, like for me, like I literally have adjustable dumbbells that I'll put in the back of my car if I'm going on like a road trip or something. You know, it's like
that's sick.
Finding what works and doing like even the bare minimum to get it in and get it done.
Definitely. I gotta get myself there.
When people look back on Ray Volpe's career, how do you hope they remember? What do you hope they remember the most, and what legacy do you want to leave in the music industry?
I hope that they remember. I don't know. I hope that they remember that I care heavily about every ounce of everything when it comes to the music, and also my fans and my community. I just care. I cared very deeply, and then also. I also want to really leave behind like this quote unquote legacy or whatever of like really caring about the songwriting of the songs. I think that we've gotten very sound design dick on table about like music, and I think that we need to have cool, catchy, fun music that's around, and I just want to focus on having fun, take the stress out. And I want to like kind of leave that behind. The energy that I gave, I guess, the energy for my shows, the fun that you can see that I'm having, I want that to like rub off on everyone.
Seems like that's working.
I hope so.
As we wrap up the podcast here, is there anything that I should have asked but I didn't?
You didn't wish me happy birthday, and it was a whole month ago.
Did I?
A whole month ago.
I think I did.
I think you did. I just the first thing came in my head. I'm pretty sure you did. I'm pretty sure you texted me happy birthday.
Yeah.
Actually,
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing at all.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate.
Oh yeah, I saw you on my birthday or like that weekend. It was
right. Yeah, it was like 2 days before. Yeah,
yeah,
Beyond Wonderland. Yeah,
it was 2 days before.
Yeah,
that's how you know he's telling the truth. And I went to dinner after. Yeah. Damn, it's a real friend, guys.
There you go. I didn't get the invite to dinner though, so
you were working.
Yeah, I had a festival to run.
You had a festival to run. Try to blame me. Hey, I didn't coordinate the dinner. Just coordinate the dinner, you know.
I really appreciate you taking this time to come on the show and to, you know, talk about all this stuff. It's you know, really great to go deep with you and to hear your perspective on all this stuff.
Dude, absolutely. Anytime. I had a great time talking to you. I support you extremely. I appreciate your existence so much. So when you asked, I was like, this is without a doubt, yes for me. Anytime.
Awesome, dude. Well, let's end it there. Love you, man.
Love you, brother.
I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man.